Hey there, welcome to the IS306 Labs number 7. Today I'm going to be giving you an introduction to one of my favorite languages out there, which is CSS. And CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. You don't really need to know what that means. I really don't know what that means myself, but all I know is that the main purpose of CSS is to modify the default styles of an HTML document. That's right, actually every single HTML tag has its own default property, which is kind of boring looking and all that, it's just plain. And CSS allows you to change these things and in fact use that to create really amazing looking websites. And most of the pretty stuff that you see online, they're all based on CSS, which is the reason why you really should learn this. And if you know a little bit of CSS, I encourage you to not stop watching this video because I'm going to be sharing with you some of the why things work the way they do. So let's begin. So how do you use CSS to change the styles? 3 steps. Number 1, you select the tag that you want to modify. Number 2, select which style property that you want to change. There are lots and lots of different properties out there. And number 3, of course, you set the new property for that. Okay? So how do you select the tag that you want to modify? Well, there are 3 different ways to do that. You can either select a HTML tag itself, or you can select a unique ID, which you can set within the HTML itself, or you can select a class, which is something like an ID, but it can repeat it a lot of times. If you don't really know what I'm talking about, it's okay. I'll show you some examples. So here you see this is how you select an HTML tag. So on the HTML side, let's say, for example, we have our favorite h1 tag, which is the heading tag. And you want to change the property of all the h1 tags, meaning that every single time you use the h1 tag, it looks different. Okay, so you don't have to do anything on the HTML side, obviously. On CSS, this is the syntax for CSS. You start with the thing that you want to select, so h1, and then you set the property. So h1 is the HTML tag itself, and one of the properties is called color. So color blue, and then you'll change the color of that font to blue. Alright, so every line is the property itself, a colon, and then after that the new setting followed by a semicolon, and then you close off with a curly bracket. Okay, so what is this thing about ID that I was talking about earlier? Well, it turns out that every single HTML tag has this attribute called ID, right, which is right here, and this is a name that you can give it, and you can say, like, for example, I have given this ID called main, right? So there can only be one tag that's using this ID main. So this allows you to change something that will only appear once in your entire HTML page. Okay, so on CSS, you point to these IDs using a hex, or hash or pound, wherever you come from, they're called different things, but this little symbol over here. So hash main refers to the ID main. So the way that I remember it is that hash is kind of like represents number, so every number is unique, so I remember that the hashtag is the one that you use for the unique thing, which is ID. Okay, now the other one is called class, and this is something that you can repeat. So for example, if you have a certain property that it's kind of like a template and you just want to change it everywhere, you can create this attribute called class. And class equals to, in this case, I call this class main. So I can have this turn up 4 or 5 times on the HTML page, and that's fine. And I just set the property on CSS. So for CSS, you put a little point or period or full stop, depending where you're from, and main and followed by color, whatever property that I may change. And every time this class tag is being used, this property will appear. All right. Now for a live demo, in case you still didn't get it. We're back in our favorite Microsoft Expression Web 4, and I've added some CSS here. So to add CSS, you can actually just put the tag called style, and like I mentioned, the head is where you set certain properties. So CSS is obviously properties, so you put the style tag in the head of the HTML page. And so here, this is kind of a little bit of a modified version of the HTML file we saw in the previous video. And so you have here an h1 tag, and so I've set the property to h1 to be red. Okay, so if you take a look on the page, this is the old one, and this is the new one. So you can see that now the word this is HTML is now red in color because this is an h1 tag. And to kind of prove a point, I'm just going to make another h1 right here, h1, and say this is another tag. And then save that, And now I just do a little refresh. And if I scroll down, there you go. Here's another H1 tag, and as you can see, both of them are red in color because I created a little style that changes all headings to red in color. Okay, so whenever you use the H1 tag again, it will all be red in color. All right. So how about IDs? How do IDs work? So all I gotta do is just change, create a new tag. So let's see. I have one called unique. See, this is the reason why I like to use Microsoft Expression, because they give you these little hints to help you do stuff. And there are lots of properties out there, and Expressions Web allows you to not have to memorize everything because there's too many to memorize. And you can just select something from the little scroll bar here. I'm going to choose color again. And I'm going to say change to maroon. Okay. So now I've created an ID called unique. And every time any HTML tag that has an ID called unique, it will turn maroon. So in this case, I've placed this ID on the paragraph tag. Okay, so if I save this file, and again, I go back to the HTML page, you will see that the paragraph has turned maroon. Everything else is still the same, only this particular paragraph has turned maroon. So that's pretty straightforward. And now I'm going to create another tag. This one is going to be a class, and it's called plenty because it's going to appear plenty of times. See, this is really simple, isn't it? And I'm going to change the color to green. Okay, so where does this plenty appear? Well, it's appearing on the H1 itself. All right, so you can see the class, the H1. This particular H1 should turn green because it's angry. No, because I placed the tag there. And you can put one here. This paragraph tag also has a plenty tag, and you can see this link here also has that plenty class. So these three things should turn green, and everything else should stay the same color. So let's take a look at Internet Explorer and refresh. And now this particular H1 tag is turned green, and so has this link down here, and this entire paragraph has turned green. Now you'll see some very interesting things here with what I've done. Now if you notice on this side here, first of all, the H1, right? The H1 tag, I set a property of red, and I set a class. So the class tag, which is within this H1, has overwritten the H1 tag. So that's one of the things that happens if you put a class or an ID. It will override the high level classes. Okay, and then another thing for this particular ID thing, we changed the entire paragraph to red, but this class here, which is HTML tag within the paragraph tag, it turns green. So again, it really depends on who's the closest CSS style that you've placed, and it will take that property. So that's how things are getting overwritten. Now here's a little tip that I want to give you. When you start using CSS a lot, and you'll start having these little problems where you find, hey, I changed this particular style and it's not changing what's going on. It's probably because something's being overwritten. Okay, so that can be kind of annoying, and sometimes you just don't know why. And if you have a lot of CSS style sheets, you just want to find out who is the one that's messing up with you. If you're using Internet Explorer, you can click on this little gear over here, and you'll see this button called Developer Tools, and these are some really useful tools that you can find. Of course, these tools are all available in Google Chrome and Firefox as well, and arguably could be better on those web browsers. But if you happen to be using Internet Explorer to do this, you can choose this little button here that says Select Element by Click. Do that, and when you click on this, it will show you all of the CSS stuff. So you can see that as you can see, this has been cancelled. So this is the one that we was talking about. We created an ID called unique, and this style has been cancelled because of something that is even closer to it, which is the plenty. So this is how you can trace who is the HTML tag that is messing around with your designs. Now, of course, you're supposed to be doing your project with Google Chrome, so I actually should be showing you this sample on Google Chrome. So if you're using Google Chrome, all you need to do is just right-click the tag that you're interested to look at and choose Inspect Element, and that's it. It will open the developer tools, and it will show you something that's similar to Internet Explorer as well, where you can see all of the different styles, which I highly recommend you to use Google Chrome to do this, since this is where your project is going to be supposed to be done on. All right, so here you can see that these are the colors that has been cancelled out, and in fact it will even show you some of the default styles that your web browser has as well. So this is actually a very good thing. All right, so let's carry on. There are also some special HTML tags that's been designed specifically for CSS, and they're specially designed. I say that because on its own they're quite useless. They do absolutely nothing. And the two tags are the div tags and the span tag. All right. So the div tag, which is div, is actually designed to be a little box. All right. And then span is designed to be an inline text. So it's designed for text. Okay. So the difference is that a div box, essentially has a height and weight, so it's got a physical presence, so to speak. In inline text, on the other hand, is basically only affects text. It doesn't have any width and height. You can give it a height and width property, but it will not do anything. It's just gonna ignore these things because it doesn't have a physical shape. Okay, and so what these things allow you to do is create unique things, so you don't actually have to say, I need to change bold tag in order to do this. For example, you can just have one that has 0 properties, which is good. So you don't have to override any old stuff. You can just create new stuff from scratch. So again, I'm just going to go and show you a very quick sample. And so to kind of show you what I mean by a div box type of thing, I have here an ID called special, which is an ID, and I'm going to set a width of 200 pixels and a height of 100 pixels with a background color of lime. Okay, and I'm going to put this div box somewhere in the middle of this particular paragraph. This paragraph itself is also a box, by the way. In case you're wondering, paragraphs are actually boxes. Okay, and I'm going to say ID equals to special. So I'm going to save this file, and generally this is the wrong way of using the div tag, but I'm just going to show it to you to kind of prove a point. Okay, and if you see this, you'll see that this particular box has broken the paragraph tag into 2. That's because this thing has a physical presence. It has height and a width. All right, so you can't have a box inside a paragraph box, and then it's just going to mess things up. So it's going to break the whole thing into 2. So when I actually take this particular box out and paste it somewhere else, let's say in between the paragraph and the H1, and then I refresh the page, you'll find that there you go. You see this box is actually taking up quite a bit of space between the paragraph and the H1. So how does that work for a span? How is a span different? If I were to take this one, right, let's delete this, and let's put a span tag right here, and let's say class equals to, oops, not class, ID equals to special. Okay, and then I say special, save. Now remember, I set a width and a height for this particular special tag, and like I said, spans don't actually have the ability to have a width and a height because they don't really have a physical shape. So when I save this, you'll see that the word special gets highlighted over here, but it doesn't mess up the box. So this is what I mean by inline. Inline refers to text, divs and boxes refer to physical shapes. All right. So that's the difference between a span and a div. All right. Now the boxes actually have a special model. We call it the box model, and these are again properties that you can change within CSS. And this particular model, this diagram, which you can find very easily online, will actually show you, the order in which things happen. So the most outer layer is the margin. All right, it's transparent. It's basically space that pushes your box away. And then after that you have a border, and then you have a padding, which is within the border itself, and finally you have the content. Okay. Just remember that for now, because in the next video I'll be showing you how to create layouts using CSS, using the box model that I'm showing you over here, as well as using divs and spans to make designs. So I hope you learned something about CSS. It's a very useful language, and this all web design is based around CSS today. And as usual, if you have any questions, you can send them to me at the IS306 eLearn discussion boards. I'll be hanging around over there and keeping my eye on it. And I'll do my best to answer all of your questions. So until the next video, see you guys soon. Bye.